I talk to my patients a little bit about David Goggins. He stretches 2 hours a day. And I'm not saying you have to stretch 2 hours a day, but I feel like if people understood that a bit of yoga poses, a bit of stretching, it goes a long way to not only stretch your body, but it also makes your mind feel better. You can release a lot of emotion when you stretch. I tell my patients who are 50 that you've got another 50 of the best years of your life. And that's why I think as healthcare practitioners, we need to live the way we want our patients to live. And I think that's how we change the world in healthcare, is by the healthcare practitioners being better. You actually can do a lot more than you think. It's never too late.
Samantha Rigby has been a practicing myotherapist for the past 23 years. Being one of the longest standing myotherapists in our industry, she brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to the industry. Sam is also the founder of Elite Myotherapy, who has 3 clinics around Melbourne. Her passion is health, vitality, and empowering others to be at their best. Having worked as part of the medical team for the Sydney and Athens Olympic teams, coordinating the myotherapy department for the Melbourne Commonwealth Games, as well as traveling internationally for 8 years with the top 100 international women's tennis players, WTA, these experiences have given her a great opportunity to have a varied career in myotherapy. One of her greatest achievements is her 2 very active boys. Now Sam is on a mission to help the youth of this world understand that they are in control of their bodies and their minds. After treating what she calls symptoms for half of her career, she decided to look outside the square for how to treat the cause. This journey has involved as many mind courses as it has body work, and now she feels she has more of a solution than ever before to treat the cause of most people's pain and dysfunction. Her approach suits the person who is proactive and frustrated with not understanding why they have so many injuries over their sporting career or life in general. She empowers them to see the reasons why they may be feeling the way they do.
Welcome back to another episode of Peak Performance Hacks, and I'm your host, Dr. Gan. Today I have an incredible guest whose passion for health, vitality, and performance for others is truly inspiring. She has an impressive career spanning work with Sydney and Athens Olympic teams, coordination of the myotherapy department for the Melbourne Commonwealth Games, and over 17 years at the Australian Open tennis tournament. She has dedicated her life to helping athletes perform at their best. She's also worked with top international women's tennis players and organizations like the National Tennis Academy and the Essendon Football Club. She brings a wealth of experience and knowledge in myotherapy, not only in symptoms, but also sort of diving into the main causes or the source for pain and dysfunction. I'd like to welcome to the show Sam Rigby.
I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Very good. You've had a very busy day, and you're in between treating patients and stopping by for a chat about performance and myotherapy. Why don't you tell us a little bit? I've obviously introduced you with some of the important points and a very amazing career that you've had, but why don't you tell us a little bit more about some of the things that you actually see now in your practice that is quite pertinent when it comes to people that are trying to achieve high performance?
Sure. So I see a lot of people coming in with lots of different areas of concern. So not just one area. I tend to get people referred to me that have been to quite a few different people. And they come with a frustration because they use the words, my whole body feels like it's falling apart, or they'll say I've got a neck problem, a jaw problem, a foot problem. And I'm quite interested in all of those things because I'm looking at the body as a whole. And when I hear those, I've got this problem, that problem, I know straight away that why they haven't received relief from the treatments they're getting done at the moment is because they're going in as a segment and they visualize they're getting their shoulder treated and then they go to another practitioner for their foot. Where I'm looking at it, that the whole body's connected and related. And so those are the sort of people. I'll get quite complex patients, a lot referred to me by sports physicians, and they are basically knowing that these patients are not responding to maybe some of the injections and the interventions that they have already attempted. And a lot of them are coming that they're junior athletes, and, it can be quite debilitating on their mind as well as their body when they're not feeling better and they're not able to continue training. So those patients that come to me, they're quite specific. I can hear with the way they're speaking that it's just a full body thing that we need to look at. And so that's kind of my approach. I hope I answered your question there.
No, it's quite interesting because I was smiling because I think I'm in that boat sometimes where you sort of, I feel like my shoulder's sore, my hip is sore. And I think you said it really well. Unfortunately, even in medicine right now, we sort of segmenting everybody to be separate. So there's a separate part. If you have an issue with your shoulder, you go and see someone who deals with shoulders. If you get issues with your knees, you see, and sort of putting it together sometimes really helps. But I would consider myself a weekend warrior. So, most of the week I'm actually working. I'm either sitting down or I'm standing in certain positions. And the weekends I tend to try to push myself, go for that big run or do something that is out of the ordinary. And I end up getting injured that way. Can you tell me a little bit more about some of those people who be in the same spot as I am, or probably even some of them who are potentially even overtraining?
Yeah, so again, overtraining is something I see a lot because I'm just going to say straight up, this is as simple as I make it in my clinic. I call my work that I'm trying to teach or empower the person to understand, because the very first thing I should say, before that is we think someone else can help us more than we can help ourselves. And I feel like we need to empower our patients more and explain to them that, you actually can do a lot more than you think. And so, because I feel like they come into a room and they just disengage from what someone's saying because they have this feeling that you're the expert, you'll fix me. And then they hear all these major terms and all this stuff. They don't even understand it. And then they are left vulnerable in your hands, basically, because, they don't know what to do. So then they go home and they actually half the time forget most of what they've been told, is what I find. So I try to make it really, really simple. And I say to them, simple terms. My work is entree. The work that the physio or your strength and conditioning coach or whatever gives you is main course. The run or the dessert is the run or the sport that you're playing. Because most people think, it's the run. I've got to do the marathon and I'm training for this and I'm training for that. But actually, no, it's the work you do beforehand that is your training. This is just the thing you get to enjoy because you've done all that work. And so that's how I talk to my patients, literally say entree, main course, dessert. So I'm not saying to them, don't listen to that physio, they were wrong, because I think that's really bad. That's a lot about, the medical profession needs to get better at actually patting each other on the back and saying that person did the best they did for that area. And I try to help them kind of work through that's what you do with that. So going back to your question about the weekend warriors, what I think people do is they get up, all right, let's just say an office worker. They're working at their desk all day. They're an accountant. They're working, and they love to get up and get a release from those numbers. So they've got to go for a run, or they want to do something quickly at lunchtime, or they'll go home from work on the way home and do that. And then on weekends, they do like massive runs or massive weight sessions. But what they're not doing is realizing that, I'm just going to hold up a little skeleton here. They sit with their body in this position all the time. So the muscles with your leg up, muscles at the front of your body tend to tighten up, and the muscles at the back of your body tend to not be working that well. So when they get up from their desks, they don't think, I need to stretch out the front of my body because I've shortened it all day long. And they don't do that. So when they run, they're kind of running with a position like that. And in that position, your bottom or your glutes don't work that well. So you just need to do a good stretch and a good release. My work is fascial work, so working on some of the connective tissue of the body. But I'll teach them how to release the front of their body, because it's the front where the problem is most of the time for most injuries. And so I think with Weekend Warriors, they're not actually doing the entree. They're not doing let's release the front of the body first. So the back of the body can actually be, because the back of the body, most people understand what the word glutes are, or their bottom muscles. They're the powerhouse, you know, and they're the things that should be running or driving most of your exercise. But if their body's like bending forward too much, their glutes are not in a good position to fire or to work. So the biggest sort of thing I could say to people is think about opening up your body and expanding it, so that your body can be in its best position for explosive work, instead of sitting at your desk, coming into the fetal position all day long.
Yeah, it's really interesting, because what I was thinking about is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, as you get older and you're not actually using the muscles that you should be using, do you find that there's an age element here, or do you think that it doesn't really matter? You see this even when you're some of the younger patients that you work with?
Yes, because if your body's not in an optimal position to work that muscle, so I'm just holding up my hand here for those of you who are listening and not watching the video, but you've got a front part of your body, you've got a back part of your body, and the body works as a push-pull thing. So it's when one side shortens, the other one lengthens, and when one side lengthens, the other one shortens. But if you're not in a great position always, then one side is always lengthening and the other side is always shortening. And then over time, doesn't matter how old you are, it eventually wears out. It's like driving a car with one tire that's a little bit worn out, or, you know, and it's just not quite right. Over time, it affects the whole function of all the tires. So I guess my passion is really to look for kids and help kids that understand how to use their body properly, so that they don't develop the long-term injuries that we see in the elite athletes that start out as kids without much help, because, you know, before they make the AFL or the tennis or whatever it is, they don't have the support around them like they do when they get to that stage. So I like to sort of intervene earlier, where they don't really have everyone around them, and I try and educate them on how to use their bodies to prevent injuries. You know, you can't always prevent an injury, because sometimes you'll trip over and hurt yourself. You can't predict that, but I would have to say it saddens me, because 90% of what I see, and, you know, don't quote me on this, but could be prevented. It's pretty sad.
So you're saying that with education and probably understanding the dynamics of their body movements, that would make a huge difference?
Just explaining simply, like, if I show you a picture here of, I'm not sure if you can see this boy. So I'm showing a picture of a boy that's sitting and he's really slumped down and his back is really rounded. Now, this boy has come in with hamstring problems and lower leg problems, and he has basically never had relief from this. He's a basketballer. What I did with him was I never touched his leg. I never did any work on that. I opened up the front of his body to release this curve here, right? And as soon as I release that tension on the outside, make him go like that, the pressure goes off. And then his glutes can function, but his glutes cannot function when he's like that. It just doesn't work. So, you know, that kid, not only did he feel better because he felt stronger and more powerful in his back chain of his body, which is the back chain. If you want to look it up, it's all over Google. The back chain of your body is really powerful and needs to be worked. But if the front chain is locked forward, it makes that inactive. And basically with this kid, not only when you're squashed over and you're slumped over, and this is what I'll say to all the adults listening to this, because you're no different, all we are is a bunch of cells stuck together. we're skin cells, hair, whatever cells, right? And then we become organs. And what happens is when you're bending forward, you're actually squashing or imploding onto your own lungs, and so then you go for a run like that and you don't have the great lung capacity. So it follows on for so many different areas. So if we can get someone more upright and more open, they're going to have double the lung capacity because they're actually not squashing themselves by their own doing. And if you tell someone that so obviously, I just don't believe they go back to work and do that all day again. I often get people say, put a little Post-it note on your laptop with a big red balloon, right? Big hot air balloon, and think about lifting up through the sky. Like while you're at work, someone can be lifting up through the sky. And yes, you're going to forget about it, but if you have a little note on your computer, the amount of times that hits your brain, you start to change. We've got to give people like the ability to kind of trigger a different response. So, I'm super passionate on saying you're actually making your hamstring work, right? No therapist in the world is good enough to overtake what you're doing on a daily basis. So if you can point something out like that to it, I mean, I do it with 10-year-olds and they respond. And then parents are going, I've tried to get them to stop going on their devices all day long. How did you do that? And I said, because I made them understand why, right? Why are you doing what you're doing? What you want to be a basketball player? I can tell you right now, walking around like that, you're not going to be a basketball player for too long. And you tell them that, and you go, you want to be a really powerful basketball player? Let's get you upright first, right? And then they respond to it. And that's why I love with the kids, because, their faces light up and their bodies. I'm sure you know this being a doctor, but kids respond a lot quicker than adults to changes, right? Their nervous system is just on fire. It's taking it all on. So, I like working with them because they change quickly.
So what I'm hearing is that posture is such an important thing. And I think there's a lot of studies out there with confidence as well on how you actually, how you sit and how you stand. For those that probably missed you or seeing you when they were kids and now they're older, what advice would you give them, if other than what you've already mentioned about improving their posture, lifting themselves up, strengthening the posterior structures or muscles at the back? What else would they benefit from?
Well, what haven't I told you? I think what they could benefit from is, first of all, understanding that it's never too late. That's like really important because I'll just use an example to sort of answer your question. I'll have someone, I've got 2 patients in mind that I'm thinking about as I'm speaking, and they came in with a list this long of conditions of what's wrong, and they've recorded it, and and their whole brain and mind is consumed with what's wrong, right? And they spend all day in what's wrong, and it's their whole focus of their brain is what's wrong. And I come in and I say to them, I'm looking forward to tearing that up one day, and they almost panic because they think, what? You're taking that list away from me? And I say to them, because if you continue to focus on that, we can't get you to another place, right? Because where focus goes, energy goes, that saying, what is it? Yeah.
Energy flows, yes.
Yeah, and then life grows, right?
Flows.
So I'm like, let's focus on where we're heading right now. And so to talk to people that have been in chronic pain or injuries and it's holding them back from their weekend sporting or whatever their achievement is, it's never too late. It's absolutely never too late. You've got to start to just think, maybe look at the fascial chains of the body, maybe look at the body as a whole, as we're a connected unit. We are not one neck muscle. One neck muscle does not get sore on its own. The body has cross patterns in it as well. So maybe it's the shoulder injury you did a while ago that kind of stopped that other side working that well. There's always a solution. I guess I would say to them, Maybe look for someone who works with fascia, because fascia is what connects the body together. And yet we give it such little attention in as, you know, physios and anyone working with the body directly. We don't think about it enough. So I think, does that answer your question?
Yeah, I think I think you've actually made a great point, and I think it's sort of empowering people to realize that they can heal themselves as well, rather than feeling that they're sort of the victim to their state or their condition, and feel like they have this story that gives them, almost puts them in a position where they feel they can't continue to go forward because they have all these conditions, as you mentioned, the list that they bring with them, which I think is so important, because I think a lot of people forget that it's not seeing you or seeing another provider that's actually changing that. It's you're actually helping them understand what they are, what they have, and how they can get past it. So the mind focus, which a lot of people forget because they don't think, I think when you see a physical therapist, you're hoping that they're physically going to touch you and change your physiology by, or even the mechanics of how your body is, but it all really starts with your mind.
Well, I'll just add as well, I often say to people can relate to this. It might be a little bit sort of not great to hear, but you know, sometimes you have to explain it to people that they can understand. If you see someone in hospital that's brain dead, their body's not working, right? So their computer's not telling the messages, you know, is not driving the messages around the body anymore. So the body can't function. And it's as simple as that. The brain and the mind, you know, we're not separate entities. Like we're all in here, and you know that if we can stimulate something that works and directs the rest of our body, that's how I work with people. I have to work with the mind and with the body, because to me, the mind is far more powerful than the body. And I have had people. There's no way what I did could help them that quickly. There's no way. Like, I mean, I don't believe that. I think they've gone away and they've refocused the way they think about a situation, and they've actually gone, like you mentioned, with the weekend warriors and getting all frustrated with injuries and stuff. Well, you can sit in the office and get frustrated with your injury, or you can listen to something like this and go, okay, well, there might be another way. You know, what if I thought of myself as more upright? What if I'll actually quickly segue into something else, that I will literally get adults and children walking around my room, and I'll give them two scenarios. And the first scenario will be walk around, and I'll talk to them about what's important to them. Okay. So it's a very fresh memory in my mind is a lady who I had yesterday who came to me to learn how to breathe. And I asked her, and she's got a lot of pain in her body, but really she's very stressed. So she wanted to figure out how to breathe. So I said to her, walk around the bed and walk around as somebody, and asked her what she was interested in. And she was interested in what excited her was, funnily enough, working with children and teaching them about finance, right? So I was like, oh, this is great, because I'm doing a children's program and I could possibly, you know, use some of your expertise. But I didn't tell her that at that point. I was just like, oh, wow, that's interesting. So she walked around the table, and I said to her, imagine that you've just created the best program ever, and you're just jumping on stage and getting this award, and all these children are thanking you because they grew up in lives that they wouldn't have had access to this, and now they've learned to save money or something, you know, that makes you feel good. And she walks around, and straight away her body's upright, her head's up. And I ask her the questions, does your body feel heavy or light? And she says, light. Are you happy or sad? Happy. Are you smiling or frowning? Smiling. Your head up or down? And I make her realize what she's doing. And then I talk to her about, you know what? Nothing's worked out in your life. You know, you're never going to get rid of this way. You're never going to learn to breathe. And I talk her through, like, you know, really difficult situation. And I want you to walk around as someone who's just told, you know, your program's terrible. It's not going to work. you've just spent all this time working on it. And she walks around the table, and I don't even have to tell them to do anything, right? Because this is how powerful the body is and the mind is, sorry. So she walks around, her head's down. I say, you're walking slow or fast? She goes, slow. Is your breathing heavy? Like, you know, and it's predictable, right? Are you happy or sad? I'm sad. And I said, well, if you can change yourself in that shorter time frame, you don't really need me, right? Because you've just shifted your focus. And if I'm going to work with you, I need you to stay up here, right? I need you to imagine that you've already done the kids program, right? Because then that's how I'll be working on her, and I will be keeping her and say, you know how your body was expanded? Well, we need it. Like, sometimes I need to work on the fascia to help that, because she spent most of her time like that. And, you know, and an extension of that conversation is, whilst I'm working on her and releasing this tension and this fascia, there's a release of emotion, and, you know, people will often tell me what's gone on for them in their lives. And it was a pretty sad story that she'd grown up with. But had I got hold of this lady as a kid, this is where I think, you know, maybe we can get in sooner. That's all. But it affects her injuries, right? So her mental state is affecting the way she gets injured or not.
Yeah, and potentially also how quickly she recovers, or what permission she gives herself to recover.
Yeah.
So with the, I've got so many questions. I guess the one, because we were just talking about this, I guess a new thing that a lot of people talk about, and I guess it affects everyone, but there's a certain age group, you know, with the younger generation, they always talk about this, that they're not resilient enough. And we were talking about how the mind and body are connected. And with the lack of resilience, especially those that are going into the sports, or they're going to be almost professional athletes, or they're looking to become professional athletes, do you find that that is a part that affects them as well, in terms of the stories they're telling themselves?
Definitely, because every time I speak, I think about a case study, because there's so many of them. But if I'm working with a group of kids at the moment that have just made nationals for basketball, and they're 14, and I get a kid in, and often they'll come in with pain or a problem, and I say to them, and they get shocked because they're all upset that this injury, you know, it's going to ruin their you know, chances at going to the national team. And I'll say, this is a gift, this injury. And they'll go, what? I'll say, because if you can, what you got to this room somehow, you're in this room now, and now we're going to teach you how you can use your body to actually use it for confidence as well, and resilience. Because and then I'll talk to them about the athletes that I work with, you know, the more sort of elite athletes that, you know, we've all seen it, right? AFL athletes every day, they're falling over, they're breaking something, they're tearing something, and then they're back. You know, we see them back there halfway through the season or the next season, and they're just as strong, and they're functioning just as highly. So I would say to them, you know, those guys don't sit there and worry about not getting back. It's not an option. They're just already back. As soon as they've injured, they're back in their heads, right? And they just take the rehab. And I'm not saying it's easy for them, and I'm not saying they don't get upset some days, but they don't focus on that for long. They spend most of their time going, where am I got to get to? What's my physio or doctor or myotherapist told me to do next? And they just keep pushing forward, because their focus is the end game. And I think the resilience, and, you know, I think we need to build that up, because I think parents put a lot of pressure on kids as well. You know, oh, you're injured, you're not going to make that team, whatever. And I just say it's a gift. This injury is a gift, because now you're going to learn little techniques to make your body more expanded. So when you're facing your opponents, they're going to be scared of you before you've even moved your body, right? As opposed to standing there like that, the brain's already decided what they're going to do with that person, because they can see, oh, that person's a bit off, they're a bit shy or whatever. And so, I think the resilience part is, you know, you become resilient by getting over things. And so some kids could go into like a bit of a bad state if people don't explain, because they don't. I mean, I think we don't understand. They don't have the knowledge that we have. They don't see the athletes recovering and coming back. You know, so I like to sort of give them a little bit of that and say that this is part of your story, and resilience is built from maybe adversity, you know. So yeah, so I think it's
exactly.
you know, it's just pointing that out.
Yeah, and it also depends who they see. I think, unfortunately, in the industry, even in the medical field, we have different people, and if they come across someone like yourself who's positive and is looking at it from that perspective versus someone else who says that looks bad, and you know, it could take anywhere between 3 to 6 months or maybe longer, and I'm not sure you'll play, it would be a very different experience.
And sometimes, I mean, it's not, I don't want to mean to sound reckless, because if you've got to tell a patient you don't need, you know, you can't play because it's dangerous for you, I would never say, oh, you'll get back next week. But what I do say is the environment that you place that injury in, and this comes back down to that full body mindset thing, the environment that an injury is in. An environment is like your health inside, and so we talk about what can you do right now to improve. What can you do? What are you eating while you're injured? Are you sleeping? Are you resting? Like, the environment you put that injury in makes a big difference, because in the old days at the footy clubs, you used to injure yourself, and the men were all drinking afterwards straight away, like having alcohol all night and going, that's certainly when I grew up, that's what the guys were doing after footy. And I'd be like, you've just broken your ankle, why are you drinking? It's like the worst thing to do. So it's just about that. I like to sort of explain the environment stuff to them as well. And then meditation, right? You can heal by, and not just healing, I'm not trying to sound like there's a miraculous thing that goes on, even though I do believe there is something miraculous that goes on with meditation. Because it's just the mind of visualizing things getting better. And
That's quite interesting. And I was going to shift gears a little bit, because I feel we've sort of looked at prevention. We've sort of looked at what we can do. I sort of want to dive a little bit deeper in terms of the professional athletes that you have worked with over the years. What would you say some of their common traits would be that you've kind of seen in all of them that would help people that are sort of trying to aim for sort of peak performance?
Okay, so the first trait would be consistency, right? It's nothing happens overnight, and there's a little saying, it's not my saying, but it's, people see the glory, they don't see the story. And the story is actually the hard work, the sweat, the getting up early, they don't go out on a Saturday night because they want to train well the next day. They track how much. I'm going to harp a lot on sleep, because sleep is so important in terms of recovery and getting better. And, it's like monitoring how long they sleep for, and not spending hours on devices and stuff. Like, they give up a lot to be at the top of their game. So I think consistency and actually having goals, writing down your goals, what do you want to achieve, and they bite it down. I guess when I get to the teams that I work with and some of the individual athletes, they've all got coaches and they've got people that are kind of driving the goals, and but they know where they're heading. They know what they're doing. So for me personally, I've got a goal by the end of the year to achieve something. And, I've gone and I've printed it out, and I've got little squares, and I've counted the 154 days. And then I highlight on each day what I'm going to do, because I know what I've got to do. I'm not stupid, but I don't do it if it's not in front of me. And that physical act of crossing it off, it's just powerful. Right.
Yes.
So, I put it on the fridge and I do it. And so it's the goals. It's also effort, Can I share a story with you about one of my athletes that
100%.
he he was an AFL athlete, and then he became a coach as well. So he then ended up over his career, I think he's been hit by a car either twice or three times. But the one time he came in, he'd been hit by a bus, I think at this one, and he was on his bicycle. And he came in, had lots of things going on, lots of pins and everything, and we started working with him again. And I've treated this particular player for over 20 years. So when he was a young kid to then the captain, and then went on to coach. And we were talking, and this story actually might be on YouTube because we've done a YouTube thing together as well. And he came in and he's lying on the bed and he said, I want to start running again. And I looked at him and said, I don't think right now is the time you start running, right? Like, I was actually quite shocked because he had lots of things going on. And he made a comment to me, and it has stuck with me forever. He said to me, the difference is you think going for a run is you've got to go and do 7Ks or 6Ks, right? That's in your mind. He said, I go to the oval and I shuffle for a minute and I tick off in my brain that I did a run today. And then the next day I go and I shuffle for a minute and a half. And so we started to have this talk, and obviously I was treating him weekly. So then I said to him, I've never been able to run this particular distance. And so then we're different locations, but we started to kind of do this thing together where I'd say, okay, I'm going to go for a run. And when I've done that, I'm going to tick it off as a run. And I'd send him a message that I did it, you know. And by the end, he was back running 20 kilometres a day. So he almost runs half a marathon a day.
Wow.
I'm going to be honest and say mine's less than half of that. But you know what? Like that even now when I go for a run, I think about this guy and I think that's an elite athlete's mindset, right? They just go, it's a run. They don't get, because they're so used to going from, I don't want to say broken, but you're very injured, to back on the oval, right? And so they've done the process a few times. But what we do is we go, oh, I can't run ever again. My body's never going to do this. And I think we give up before we should. So, you know, I'm old now, I'm 52, and I have a bit of a goal.
Yeah. You're still young, Sam.
I tell my patients who are 50 that you've got another 50 of the best years of your life. So I'm going to take that on as well. But I think that that's what I like to do. And that's why I think as healthcare practitioners, we need to live the way we want our patients to live, right? Because that's what they hear.
Yeah.
That's what they see, right? So if they come to my house, they see the charts up, they see the vision boards, they see they see how I speak. And I think that's how we change the world in healthcare, is by the healthcare practitioners being better.
Yeah, I agree. I actually, part of the on the show, I actually have this segment, but you've already gone into it, and it's called Walk the Talk. So essentially, I put you on the spotlight, and you tell me, what do you do for yourself to similar to what the story you said, that you didn't think you could do it, and then you started practicing, and the story you told yourself. What do you do in order to sort of walk the talk as an example to your patients?
So I don't start, like, I guess I've conditioned myself for this now. I really am a big believer in meditation, and not every single day do I get up and have time to meditate. However, I will never come to work. So the work that I do is called activations, and we activate the body, we breathe, and I won't start the day without activating my body. It's like kind of call it a body meditation, but I'm opening up and becoming expanded, because I do believe that there is energy. There's a lot of science to prove that how we feel around people, it's a thing. People just can't see it, so they think it's not a thing. But how am I showing up to my patients? If I come in and I'm in expanded, angry, just had a fight with someone, that kind of thing, how am I going to be as a practitioner? So I'll always take a few minutes to activate. I always talk to my patients. It's a very common term now, the miracle morning or the miracle routine. But I literally can't start the day unless I get up really early because I've got 2 kids that I manage alone. So I've got, I'm up at 5 at the gym. I do my workout, my activations, and then I listen to something to condition my mind. So I have a few people that I follow, and I really love what they have to say. I love the way they think, and I don't even sometimes have to hear it. It's just the voice triggers. That's the way I want my mind to live. I don't want to live in what happened yesterday because we can get caught up in that, right? And so I think that's my miracle morning. And then I have on my phone a plan, and then my plan is literally 10,000 steps a day, gym 5 times a week, certain amount of calories to achieve my goal, and go to bed early, right? Because that's my thing. I've got to somehow fit it all in and get to bed where I'm having at least 6 to 7 hours sleep. So, yeah, and then go to sleep with a meditation, or there's a lot to be said about the different, sound waves. So the theta, I like to go to sleep with something in the background, and taking care of this and then this.
Yes. Yeah. It's really interesting because your activation, I think it's a lot of people do it differently. I think in Tony Robbins, when he trains people, he talks about priming your body and priming your mind. And I think with a lot of personal development people over the years, I think that has become such a big part of how you set the morning, sets the rest of your day, and also your physiology of how you want to come across to your patients or whoever you're working with, I think. So I think that's very
important. He talks a lot about change your physiology, change your state. So I have a little thing here that I share with my little kids, and that Superman, right? You put your hands on your waist, and you up and you change your brain because you've changed the way you're sitting, right? So, but I'll share this with you because you brought Tony Robbins up, and I have had a personal one-on-one with Tony Robbins. At one of his events.
Really? Okay.
And again, a lot of people say, oh, he's too rah-rah, or this one's that one. And I just go to things, listen, pick different things from different people. But I know that the people in that room are there to feel better and also to make shifts, right? So you want to spend time around people that want to shift. You don't want to spend time around the drainers, right? If you've got drainers in your life, you know what? Spend less time with them and go around the people that make you feel good, because, changing your posture makes you feel better. And I guess as practitioners, which you are as well, if you can make someone feel a little bit better about their day, there's a ripple effect that goes on to the next person they come into contact with. And I think as healthcare practitioners, we are so caught up on that shoulder problem or that, vein or whatever you do, that we get so narrow-minded that we forget there's a person there. And I think that when we remember the person, then someone, when people come, I work a lot with, I don't know if I'm allowed to mention doctors' names or not, but I work a lot with a sports doctor, Dr. Tim Wood, and I have to say I'm so grateful to him because honestly, he's opened his mind up to sleep, to diet, to, he doesn't want to just take a quick fix to any patient, and he knows exactly the right patient to send to me. And he's just happy that they get help. He's not happy to be the one that gets the accolades because he knows, he's like, I could probably do that, but it's better for them to have this. And, he's been fantastic to see the medical world starting to shift and change, because we worked together 20 years ago at the Tenets for years. And, and now I'm more likely to refer to someone like that who actually sees the full person than, because injuries, you see it all the time. Two people get diagnosed with the same thing and they two different outcomes, There's got to be something within those people that is different. So I just think as well, everyone, even if you're not a practitioner listening to this, even if you're an accountant sitting at your desk, smiling at someone next to your desk, or, you know, talking to them about their posture or something, you know, like be positive around someone.
Yeah. And I think I think the shift is happening. It's just that I think as you get older, you realize that just treating the conditions that you thought were very mechanical, you get to a point where you hit a roadblock because you can't get further and you can't get to this patient unless you go a little bit deeper. And so I think it's happening right now, and it's very important. The last thing, we don't have a lot of time left, but the last thing I wanted to sort of touch on is stretching. You mentioned, doing a little bit of stretching earlier when we spoke about injuries. Do you think it's something that most people that are older, and the weekend warriors, or people who are just trying to perform at their highest, do you think it's something they should be doing every day?
Yeah, so there's a lot of fascial stretches you can do. Again, for the sake of this podcast, it's hard for me to go in and demonstrate all the stretches. But if you are having a look on, you can Google, and YouTube's got some great examples, but you want to look at stretching some of the fascia as well, so the connective tissue. So look up a stretch for your back line or your back chain. Some of the yoga stretches are really great for fascial stuff. So you can do, when you spread your legs and you touch one arm on one foot, you're kind of bending over, and then on the other side, you can grab, there's lots of, I think yoga is really good in that regard. And I feel like why people feel good in some of the yoga stretches, not all of them, but some of them, is because they're getting like this full body connection stretch. So I think stretching is very important. But I think what we need to do is understand why we're so tight first, because you can stretch all day, but it comes down to what I said at the beginning, that if you're sitting in a shortened position all day, you get up and you don't know that you really need to be stretching the front of your body, not the back as much as the front, because you've squashed the front all day, right? So you just think, what do I need to do? Yes, stretching is important. Foam rollers, the foam rollers, and rolling out your fascia, rolling the side of your legs is super important. I feel like the quads are super, super important because they're such powerful muscles, and they literally, they sit here and they'll pull the pelvis forward because they're so strong if they're tight. So we need to relax them so the pelvis can be in more of a straightened position. So then your glutes are able to function. So definitely stretching. I'm sure you're aware of, I talk to my patients a little bit about David Goggins. I don't know if you're probably aware of him. But he stretches 2 hours a day. And I'm not saying you have to stretch 2 hours a day, but I feel like if people understood that a bit of yoga poses, a bit of stretching, it goes a long way to not only stretch your body, but it also makes your mind feel better. You can release a lot of emotion when you stretch. Yeah.
So you're saying during the day you would just do little stretches.
Refer people to a YouTube video that is quite easy to do and follow, and it's called Yoga Poses for Trauma, right? Hip yoga poses for trauma. And, because the hips have they hold a lot of tension. So, but when they're doing those poses, I know they're going to improve their glutes. I know they're going to stretch all their fascia. So I hope that answers your question.
No, definitely, because because one of the things, I'm probably time poor. And so what tends to happen is that if I did a stretch, I would probably run a stretching routine for about 20 minutes. But then that takes away from my extra time that I would probably want to do a high intensity train or something of that sort. And so I was just trying to, how could I kind of put it all together without reducing the amount of time that I have to do an activity, for example. I'm
going to show you one thing here. You rub the back of your head quite a lot, like quite strongly, and really free that up. That's a really great way to get your back chain firing. And You can do a 5-minute stretch, right? And then go out.
Yes.
However, it's like you want to squash in a half an hour run, but you're sacrificing what might happen and the injury that may occur in the future, right? So whether it's not you come up with on a Sunday morning, I'm going to do a 45-minute stretching session, right? It doesn't always have to be just before the run, but if you're sitting all day and then you go out for a run, maybe just hitting your hips, maybe hitting the area with just to free it up, just to get your brain to go, hang on a minute, I don't want you to be so tight. So if we just hit an area like that, that's what I do with some of my athletes, just hitting the muscle, just activating it a bit before you go, you know? It's like the athletes that you watch at the Olympics, specifically the swimmers, they're activating their body, they're moving it just before they go. So, you could just do like one session a week where you do like a yoga session off. Yeah.
I reckon that's extremely helpful because I think I used to do that like once a week yoga, which I felt I wasn't sure was doing anything, but then I changed it to a daily stretching because I think it just helps me feel better even when I'm in treatment all day. Sam, thank you so much. I'm so grateful I had you here because you shared so much information, and I think it's going to help a lot of people. And if people want to find out more about you, where can they find you?
They can find me at elitemyotherapy.com.au, or otherwise you can look me up on LinkedIn as well. And
perfect. I'll leave that in the description.
Sure.
The
You
show
can
notes
you can
as
leave my business number as well if you like.
Perfect. Well, Sam, thank you so much, and I'll catch you next time.
Thank you, and well done for doing this. I think it's awesome.
This wraps up this episode of Peak Performance Hacks. All the links and resources are in the video description or in the resource section, whether it is on Spotify or Apple Podcasts. If you're watching this on YouTube, please consider subscribing. And if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, please leave us a review so that more people can discover our podcast and it could benefit them as well. Until I catch you next time, speak soon.